Having all the data that we do today at our fingertips does not make it easier to communicate. It actually makes it harder. The problem is anyone these days, and I literally mean anyone, can put data in a program and create a graph. Anyone. And for a lot of people, this is where the data visualization process stops. The problem is, this can make the most useful data, the most interesting story, completely underwhelming, or worse, completely impossible to understand. That's why we're here today, is to talk about data visualization and storytelling techniques. Hello, my name is Kate Norris. I am from Presentation Boss, and we help experts plan, design, and deliver their best presentation. And today we are talking about data visualization and storytelling. Now, I kind of bend these together and I call it data presentation. And to me, data presentation skills are about creating verbal and visual clarity that directs people's attention exactly where you want it and make sure that your stakeholders can understand the current state where we are now and the recommendations that you want to action. And it helps them understand why your recommendations should be approved. So today we're going to go through 5 sections, elements, parts, whatever you want to call them. And we're going to start with choosing the right graph. So this is about making sure that the graph that we actually select for communication is effective and appropriate. We're then going to head into data visualization techniques, and I'm going to get you to pick up a pen and a piece of paper. Oh, let's pop me down there. We'll then talk about actually finding the story in your data and identifying what it is that you want to talk about and how to really hone in on that. We're then going to head into telling the story, how you actually structure your story in a logical and interesting way. And then we're going to finish with some storytelling techniques, kind of more specific to dashboarding and presenting a lot of data altogether. So let's get started. All right, choosing the right chart. Now, I think the thing that we need to remember, especially if we are numbers people or if we're studying something or very well versed in data science or data analytics or something like that, what is very simple to us and what is second nature to us is not necessarily simple or clear at all to people who are not in our world. And we need to remember that there are 2 types of graphs. There are graphs that are used to explore data and analyze data, and then there are graphs and charts that are used to explain data. 2 very different things, exploring and explaining. You would generally never present to someone the type of graphs that you use to explore and analyze data. And the reason for this is quite simple, is that you don't want your audience analyzing the data because they may not have the context, they may not have all of the information that you have. And the risk becomes that they end up coming to a different conclusion than you. Remember that the goal is not to make the audience do the analysis. The goal is to show your conclusions and to explain your conclusions. A lot of people think that data visualization is about creating really cool, really sexy charts, and unfortunately it's not. Clarity will always outweigh cool. If you can find graphs that everybody understands, that will be received communication-wise much better than anything that is complex. There are 3 graphs that are very good for explaining because everyone understands them, and they are a bar chart, a column chart, and a line chart. These are simple. I know they're not particularly exciting, but they are very clear, they're very simple, and they can be understood by your audience very quickly. Pie charts, I'm not personally a fan of. I think if you use them very sparingly and you've got a really good reason for using it, fine, but you have to have a really good reason. As a general rule, I would say avoid pie charts. They're actually really difficult to gain understanding of looking at a pie chart. Maps are the other one that are really good to use as long as the information is simple. If you've got a map with, say, this is the kind of thing that we see where there is so much information. I mean, this is just one country. Imagine if you did this for the entire world. And I've seen those graphs around where there is just so much color going on. There is no clarity here. So if you're going to use a map, again, make sure that it's simple. And you want it to be like as simple as your bar and your line graphs, like those really easy to understand graphs. I know it's not particularly exciting, but remember, we are after communication and explaining, not about exploring and analyzing. And I mean, if you've got kind of a group of people who are really into the explaining, that's when you get kind of tricky and complex with your graphs, because you're around people that also understand that. But if you're communicating this to someone, you need to make sure that you go simple and just stick with your basic graphs. Let's talk where we start with doing data visualization. Now, the thing to remember here is that every single thing that we add to our page or to our screen takes cognitive load of our audience. It takes time to process. And very, very easily, this can become overwhelming. So generally what I suggest to people is pick up a pen and pick up a piece of paper and start sketching what you actually need to include on your graph, what you need for communication. It is much, much easier to add what you do need than to take away what you don't. It's one of those weird psychological things that it's easier to add rather than to take away. And the thing with our software, whether it's Excel, Power BI, Tableau, it doesn't matter what program, there's hundreds of them out there. They all kind of by default add a lot of things that you don't necessarily need. And this is why I say start with a pen and paper and just add what you actually need to start. And then like literally use a highlighter to highlight the bits where you want your audience's attention directed rather. And then you'll go to your software and you'll literally recreate that. And then you'll look at your software. What is it added by default? Is it on the piece of paper that you've drawn? Do you actually need it? If it's not, take it away. Be very careful about that temptation to add things that you don't actually need. What we do not want is chart clutter. And this is little bits and pieces all over our graph that we don't actually need, because as I said earlier, this very, very quickly leads to overwhelm. And that means that your audience is not focused on exactly what you want them to focus on. They're not focused on the story that you're trying to tell. They're focused on trying to process all the little bits that are on your screen. This is something that we cannot help. We cannot completely control where people are looking, and so we need to just only give them a certain amount of things to look at. So pick up a piece of paper, pick up a pen, and start sketching what you actually need. This is the first step I always take in my data visualizations. I have that many little notepads and everything scattered around with little sketches, and it makes sure that my data viz is always clear, concise, and just has the elements that I need. Finding your story. All right. Using a specific example, a very specific example, is perhaps the most powerful and ironically underutilized tool in data storytelling. It's very easy to talk about data as a whole. It's very easy to talk about overall trends, what the data is showing, but getting down deep, getting specific into the story of one individual shows that you properly understand the data and you understand how it interacts in real life. The company that I believe does this the best in the world is World Vision. Now, when you give money to World Vision, you're actually giving money to communities. You're not giving it to individual children. But they have a program that you've probably heard of, which is Sponsor a Child. And instead of telling us about overall countries or even communities, they go deep. They go deep and they find the story of one child's life. I mean, they do it many, many times, but still they find specific examples of who their data and their money is going to help. Instead of telling us about overall countries or even communities, they go down deep. They find how the recommended actions, which is giving money, sponsoring a child, they find exactly how that recommendation is going to impact one child's life. This is why they are such a successful company, because their data storytelling is so powerful, because they manage to hone in on individuals. This is who we connect with. We don't connect with countries as a whole or communities as a whole. We connect with people. I say that this is the most powerful tool because it gives us someone to connect with and empathize with. And I say that it is the most underutilized tool because it is the most difficult part of data storytelling, is really honing down into the individual. If you're talking about, let's say, improving the security and the safety of a country, rather, how is that going to affect the overall country? It makes its citizens happier. Fine. How does that affect a community? Well, they feel safer. Fine. How is that going to affect a person? Well, they feel safer. What does that mean? This could mean on Tuesday, when the safety of a country is low, let's call him Steve. Steve is afraid to go and get groceries because he might be shot. This is the individual story. But a week later, when the safety of the country is improved, Steve can now comfortably go and get groceries, does not have to fear for his life, does not have to fear for the life of his family, his children. So now we're starting to understand the individual impact that something such as safety of a country can have on one person. So keep asking yourself, how does this affect one person? One person. Keep honing down, because I swear to you, I promise, this is the most powerful thing you can possibly do. Storytelling. So you've probably heard that there is a lot of neuroscience around why we tell stories, why stories are so effective, and it's all true. There's a lot of it around. But when it comes down to it, a story is simply a way of putting information into a flow that is both logical and memorable. And there's a whole lot of formulas that you can use for storytelling. When it comes to data, however, I like a very simple formula that is simply context, conflict, and conclusion. This will give you a really nice flow. It means that you can kind of know where to put your information, and you can fit in all your kind of interesting storytelling bits all around it. Let's start with the context. And here I'm going to use the World Vision example again, because as I said earlier, the way that World Vision does storytelling is beautiful. They're absolutely world class. So the context is the background. Where are we now? Maybe some background information, and what's the problem that needs solving? So in terms of the World Vision, we've got the context. Children and families in this area are recovering after several years of civil war. That's the background. That's the current state. We then move into the conflict, which is, what did the data show us? What's the reason for it? What needs to change? What needs to continue? What needs to end? All of those sorts of questions are things you can ask yourself to get this information. So again, World Vision. Because of their experiences, many have low self-esteem and lack hope for the future. Low family income means that instead of going to school, children are often forced to work as labourers in construction and fishing. Health and education facilities are poor, and there are a lack of job opportunities and career guidance services. Alcohol abuse in the community is a major concern. Your audience should be kind of thinking, wow, this really is a problem. I don't like this. I really am itching for a solution to this problem. Give me a solution. You've got a bit of tension there. And then that is where our conclusion comes in. And our conclusion is, what can we do about it? What do we expect to happen from these actions? And then what happens if we don't take these actions? Again, let's go World Vision. Child sponsorship programs can give adolescents access to life's essentials while inspiring them to become leaders of positive change. You can help Laxmic and other vulnerable children in her community overcome the challenges of poverty, gain life skills, and plan for a brighter future. So the conclusion, the child sponsorship programs, gives us the answer. It lets us know what your money is actually going to do. If we approve these recommendations, if we give money to the sponsorship program, this is what's going to happen. It overcomes the challenges of poverty, they gain life skills, they plan for a brighter future. That is inspiring, and that is what gets people to give money to the child sponsorship program. The thing I would caution about here is about giving us what I call the analyst's journey. This is where analysts kind of make the data about themselves rather than about the problem. And this is when analysts talk about what they actually did to analyze the data. So don't tell us what you did, how you analyzed, the steps that you took. What we need is just the outcome. What did the data show us? What conclusions can be drawn from the data, rather than taking us through the process of actually analyzing it. But if you can use that outline, the context, conflict, and conclusion, that's going to put your story in a really nice format. Again, kind of get as individual and as specific as you possibly can, because that will give you the most powerful, the most memorable data story. Like a hamster is possibly my favorite thing to talk about when it comes to data storytelling. And the first question I get asked a lot is, why do I use a hamster and not a guinea pig? Because guinea pig is Australian. 2 reasons. First of all, I think that guinea pig has too many kind of like experimental connotations that we want to avoid. And second of all, I think I just grew up with too much American influence. We don't have hamsters in Australia, but I know what a hamster is, and most people know what a hamster is as well. So let's talk about hamsters in terms of data storytelling. Now, you need to think of your audience as though they were a hamster who wanted a drink. If you have a thirsty hamster, pouring a cup of water over its head is not going to make it not thirsty. You need to help it and give it water slowly, bit by bit. This is why it's got little, this is why they have those little drip feeders, because it allows the water to just be given to them bit by bit. And the thing is, your audience is the same with data. People are like thirsty little hamsters. You need to slowly feed them data in order for them to absorb it. If you give your audience an entire dashboard full of information, full of data, straight away, they will become overwhelmed. You need to introduce your data and your findings slowly, one by one piece of information at a time, before you put everything in front of them. The thing we need to remember is making people feel dumb does not make you look smart. Making people feel empowered, making people feel smart makes you look smart. People subconsciously understand that there is great skill in making complex information simple and explaining complex information in a simple manner. I think the way that I really understood this first was about flying a plane. Now, my business partner is a qualified pilot, and when you throw this in front of him, he understands it immediately. But when you're learning to fly a plane, when you first walk in and you've never been inside a plane before, you don't get given this entire dashboard of dials. You get given one dial at a time, and you are helped to understand it one piece at a time before the whole set is put in front of you to make sense of. And the same goes for our dashboards. If you are explaining it, if you are pitching, if you are giving your audience information, you need to slowly introduce information and data one piece at a time. Explain it before everything is put in front of them. Again, think of them like a hamster having a drink. Don't pour the entire cup of water over their head. Slowly feed it in bit by bit. What this means is, if you're in Tableau, I don't want to see a whole dashboard straight away. I want the sheet explained to me. I want just that one graph, that one visualization explained first, before I have the 4 of them put in front and seen how they interact. Just one little piece at a time. It helps your audience absorb it, because the thing is, just human nature. People won't admit straight away that they don't understand something when it's all given to them. So if you can just show them bit by bit, it will help them understand it much, much better. They will thank you a lot more for it. And your recommendations will carry a lot more weight because it shows that you can explain it, and then they understand exactly your conclusions, where you're coming from, and it makes that recommendations and that action much more enticing and much more likely to be actually actioned. Data communication is really quite hard work. It is not an easy skill to master, but the payoffs, both personally and professionally, can be really quite awesome. Data communication skills are very sought after, and if you put the work into developing your data communication skills, you will see your career do things that you never thought were possible. Good luck, have fun, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. Bye.